Hey everyone, it's Jenny at JC Cards and I'm excited to be taking part in a video hop today celebrating the new Enchanted Woods release from Trinity Stamps. The next stop in the hop is in the video description below. So without further ado, I'm going to show you how I created both of these two cards in my video today using goodies from the new release. Both of my cards are featuring this stencil set. It's a layering stencil set comprising of 3 different stencils called Terrific Terrazzo. It's 6x9, and when you pull them all together, you get this fun looking terrazzo tile type look. And just a quick tip, if you look carefully on the stencil, you see this. It is labeled each layer with stencil A, stencil B, stencil C. And I recommend when you're doing your stenciling, if you're doing all 3 layers, that you have that facing up towards you. That way you know that you've got it the right way round. I'm using a stencil mat to align my stencils, and that way I know I've got them all perfectly lined up when I add my ink. If you don't have a stencil mat like this, I recommend you could use your MISTI or just use a grid mat, but just make sure that you align each of your stencil layers along the same grid line each time, and then that way you should be able to line it up. It's not as straightforward using these stencils as others where you maybe have florals or leaves that you can line up. So this is a little bit more difficult, but if you use those tips, then it will work out just perfectly. I'm using a variety of earthy colours and peachy oranges for all 3 layers today. My inks are from Pink Fresh Studio. I've got them listed below as well if you're interested in what colours I'm using. And I'm applying the colour all over a panel of white Nina Soloway 80-pound cardstock trimmed to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. You do get a little border along one side or a couple of sides when you use the stencil mat itself. So I am going to trim this down ever so slightly to leave an 1/8 inch border around the whole panel. So that's my first one done. For my second one, I'm using the same cardstock, same trim down to 4 1/4 by 5.5. But I'm only going to apply ink in roughly the center of the panel, maybe up towards the upper part of the cardstock. And with a layering stencil, you can still do that. You just need to be careful that you don't go all the way out to the edges. So keep an eye on where your cardstock is when you're applying the ink. And you can see I'm not going all the way out to the edge. I'm using some reds and some greens for this one. And that way I just get that terrazzo pattern focus in the center of the card, and it sort of fades out towards the edges, which is quite a fun and different look. Kind of reminded me a little bit like confetti, so that's exactly what I'm going to use it to represent on my first card. So I'm using this Rainbow Snail stamp and die set, which is in the new release. He is so cute. I love it. And the stamps that are included let you create a shell that looks like a rainbow if you use rainbow colors. I'm not going to be doing it as a rainbow today, but it's a great way to build up that snail's shell. It's a really fun idea. Because this is a stamp builder set, I prefer to do my die cutting first and then place the shape back into the cardstock and use that as my guide. You'll see I've got my magnet holding down one side of the shell. I'm inking up the snail's body, first in one color of ink, and then in a darker ink, I'm using an ink dauber. I've left the stamp in place and I'm just going around the outside edge of the snail. And that way I can stamp it down back exactly where that first layer is stamped, and do that 2 or 3 more times, and you'll see you get this nice depth of color as it fades out towards the center, almost like he's 3-dimensional. Now you'll see the rainbow builder. I'm going to do this in different shades of red, starting with a darker red and then gradually moving out towards a pink, or in towards a pink, I should say. And these are very forgiving stamps. You can line them up and don't have to be too careful about where you add them. They do have gaps between each of the rainbow bows, as it were. And I've stamped each one down a couple of times. These are brand new solid stamps, so I prefer to stamp down a couple of times to get solid color. And as you can see, it's really helpful to have that outline guide from the already die cut shape. I'm then going to stamp his little smiley face. I think there's also a couple of eyes included in the set that you can just add without a smile. And then there's this fun sparkle you can add over the top. I'm going to heat emboss it, adding powder just to make sure that I don't get embossing powder sticking where I don't want it. And then I'm going to add that down with some embossing ink. And then I'm going to heat emboss it using some gold embossing powder. And that just adds a fun little sparkle over the top of him. His face is so cute. I like the fact that you can add the face afterwards, and I was like playing around with the placement of his eyes and smile, sort of having him looking off to the side as well. So there's different ways you can use it. I'm gonna stamp the little fun party hat in dye ink, and then the happy birthday in a pigment black ink as well. And then there's a solid hat shape that I'm coming back in with those same colors that I used on his shell, and just using an ink dauber to create that ombre look that matches his shell on his party hat. Using the coordinating dies, I'm going to cut those out. Now, to adhere my terrazzo panel, I'm using some fun foam. I just grabbed any color from my stash, found this green, and then I'm going to adhere my panel onto a white note card top folding, and then pop up my little guy with some foam tape, and then his hat at a jaunty angle off to the left, and then the sentiment. I have these embellishment mixes as well that Trinity Stamps sent to me, and I thought they were fun. Nice green colours sort of tied in with that back party confetti background, so I'm going to add a few here and there. And they also sent me this pickup stick. It's gorgeous. Look at the rhinestones. How has this not been in my life? It's brilliant, and it works so well. Watch this. Pop, stick. And it just lets go of it. It's great. This is like my new favorite tool that I have in my stash. It's just pretty and it works. I love it. And that finishes my first card. Isn't he cute? I just love his little party hat and that confetti background. This card would be great for your stash for a kid's birthday, a boy or a girl, or, you know, it just works for anyone. Isn't he cute? My second card, like I said, I've trimmed down this terrazzo background panel, and I'm using the new Ferntastic stamp set, which has coordinating dies. I love the fact that it has the sentiment dies as well. I wish all stamp companies would do coordinating sentiment dies, because I hate fussy cutting around sentiments. I've grabbed one of the dies from the set, and I'm going to die cut it out from the center, because this is going to be a shaker card. And I've adhered it in my, well, not adhered it, I've added my magnet in place with a panel of white cardstock in the background, and I'm lining up my stamp from the set that coordinates with that die, and then I'm going to stamp it down in green ink, and then come back in with my ink dauber with a darker green and get that ombre look, same way that we did with the snail's body, and stamp that down again. And the reason I lined it up like that is this is going to be a shaker card, and I want this leaf to show through in the background, so I'm lining it up as best I can with the window I've already cut. I'm also going to come in and add a little bit more detail using embossing ink and embossing powder, so you can use that ink dauber to add embossing highlights onto the edges of the fern here. I'm using gold embossing powder again, and then I'm just going to heat that up, and you get this nice pretty shimmer on the edges of that fern. Now if I go back to my terrazzo panel, I flipped it over, trimmed out some acetate, and then just going to adhere that down with some liquid glue. And then I'm going to use thin foam tape strips. These are quite thin, so I'm using a double layer, and it helps to be able to wiggle that foam tape around your window if you remove both sides of the release paper. Make sure that when you're creating a shaped shaker like this, you do try to follow as best you can the outline and don't leave any gaps. My shaker bits are going to be these amazing little feeling mushy, I guess they're embellishments, shaker pieces. And one quick tip, when you've got a shaped shaker window, add your shaker bits to the base panel first, and then that way it is far easier to line up the window. If you add them into the window first, very little chance you're going to be able to align that up. It's going to be your best guess, and it won't work, trust me. I'm then going to adhere that down onto a top folding note card, And then the sentiments in this stamp set are hilarious. I love them. I'm all for a great pun, and these are all brilliant. Love the coordinating die. And I've stamped it down in the dark green ink to tie in with those fern tips. Coming back in with some more of the embellishment mix. This is a different one again. And that finishes my second card. And love the way that shakes. Oh, those little mushrooms are so cute. That's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed. Be sure to check out the new release from Trinity Stamps. Links below in the description box, along with the next stop on today's hop. Have a wonderful day. Bye.